I think Nintendo has it out for me. Or maybe I'm just cursed, because for the third time, on a weekend that I'm traveling, they've dropped another Age of Imprisonment trailer. Now, I'm not really complaining, as this trailer was once again packed with lots of intriguing content. But I'm just saying, if it means I have to get on a plane every time we want a new trailer, I'm gonna need a bigger travel budget. So, let's dive in with my quick first pass analysis of this new footage in the third installment of the Kokiri Theory Field Report. We open with a score that will likely serve as the main theme for the game. This got me pretty excited, because Age of Calamity's soundtrack had some real bangers, and from what we've heard, it looks like Age of Imprisonment is off to a strong start on the music front. As the trailer begins, we see Rauru in a field, the secret stones, and the hand of Demon King Ganondorf holding some plume of dark magic. This next part is when it starts to get interesting. We see the mystery construct rising from a kneeling position as Rauru says, "A power this great tests the very depths of its bearer's soul. Just like the secret stones, it seems you can be used for good or evil." Now, I think it's pretty clear that this line will be directed to the construct. And it's interesting because we've explored a similar dynamic with the Guardians. They were created to protect Hyrule, but turned on the kingdom when Ganon's malice overcame them. And we also got a taste of this theme through the corrupted construct in Tears of the Kingdom. So I wonder if this theme of technology will be explored further through this character. We get a shot of Sonia, and then Rauru seemingly snapping out of a memory into the dark reality of the Imprisoning War. After this sequence, we move on to Ganon's perspective. His dialogue says, "At last, my triumph is nigh." And then, in his Demon King voice, he says, "Let Hyrule suffer beneath your boundless might, and make known the Demon King's certain supremacy." This line is directed towards the bosses that we first met in Tears of the Kingdom. While in previous trailers we got to see some modified forms of Goma and Muktarok, we now are getting our first look at Queen Gibdo and Kolgera. Notably, they look pretty different than how they appeared in Tears of the Kingdom. Queen Goma appears to be wearing a gown that evokes the color patterns of a moth as she launches wind attacks against Rauru and the Gerudo sage Ardi. I'm not exactly sure where this scene is located, as while there are piles of sand around, there also appear to be a good number of smoldering trees, which are not common to the Gerudo Desert. We then see Zelda running from some sort of proto-Kolgera. It has its distinctive icy claws, but it's dragging itself across the ground. This battle appears to take place in an enemy camp, in what I'm guessing is the Korok Forest, based on those glowing pea pods in the background. Now that we've gotten a look at all four of the bosses in the past, I have a bit of a theory about them. If we look closely at all of them, they definitely share some characteristics with each other and with other prior enemies. First, they all have eyes like the Gloomspawn, and they each have a mane of red hair that's reminiscent of the Blight Ganons from Breath of the Wild. In that game, those were referred to as Phantoms of Ganon, and it seemed that the red hair was meant to represent his spirit. So that might be the case here as well. But another element that each of these creatures share is that they all seem to be fairly humanoid. Like they're unfinished monsters midway to evolving to the final forms we saw in Tears of the Kingdom. Kolgera is horrifically dragging itself across the ground instead of flying. Marbled Goma has a human-looking upper body, complete with muscles chiseled into the stone. The Muktarok is the hardest to make out, but you can still tell it has a much more humanoid build than the flying squid it later becomes. But the most compelling of these, for me, is Queen Goma. She doesn't have wings, appears to only have 2 arms, which are much more delicate than the Tears version, and most importantly, she's literally wearing a dress, complete with a corset and puffs at the wrists. I already suspected that the Queen Gibdo we saw in Tears was the undead version of Twinrova, and while it seems that she's already been Gibdofied here if that's true, it sure seems like it happened recently if she's still wearing a dress. Now I'm starting to wonder if each of these enemies was a humanoid character who has been possessed by Ganon and transformed into these monstrous creatures. Clearly, they needed a little more time to cook, since they all look a little bit like the Animorph version of their final form. But that's just the sense I'm getting from the limited footage we have. And if I'm right, the concept of that is pretty horrifying. If we see people being transformed into these, either willingly or by force, that would be a bit freaky. Our next segment is narrated by Sonia, who says, "In times to come, my husband will be faced with countless difficult decisions." We see a lot of battle footage here, but the part that stood out to me was Zelda coming face to face with the construct. She appears to reach out her hand to touch the construct, and then flinches, likely because she recognizes its physical similarities to Link. I think this is when she first meets these two characters, in part because they're both missing the Zonai scarves that will be part of their final designs, and in part because of her hesitant reaction and partial recognition of the construct. I definitely think this moment is pointing further to this character being connected to Link somehow. And I also think the editors are giving us a bit of a clue by timing Sonia's "my husband" to land right on this moment. Not that Link and Zelda are married, but it hints at their romantic connection. But maybe I'm overthinking that. Moving on, we see some special attacks, like Artie using a finger gun to annihilate a group of bokoblins. And we get a peek under the Zora's mask, which reveals some teal lipstick, right before she blows a kiss to empower her companion. We see a shot of Zelda, Rauru, Minoru, and the scribe Lunaria looking happy about something, followed by more cuts of the sages under Rauru's line, "The fight is yours, would you have it?" We then get a familiar teardrop memory effect, followed by Zelda's line, "I must improve to protect those I care about most." During this sequence, we see some characters of all the races, likely the captains, and then we see the crew charging into battle. And then in one of my favorite moments, we get this badass scene of the Construct and Korok walking towards a threat that seems to have frightened the other soldiers. Zelda then says, "We all stand beside you, however possible," and we see her preparing sync attacks with the characters. The Rito sage, Rafika, extends his hand and twirls Zelda in one of the cutest moves I've ever seen. We then see the Korok clumsily fall onto and flip off of the mystery construct. And for the first time we hear his voice saying, "Raring to go." The Korok and the construct seem to be paired in a lot of the footage we've seen, so I'm really curious to learn more about what their connection is. Next, we see a fight against some Aerocuda on what appears to be the Stormwind Arc, followed by a shot of Zelda launching off of Artie's shield to take on some Gibdo. And then we see the Construct again, who seems to snap into his typical appearance mid-flight, before crashing into a group of enemies. As the trailer closes out, Zelda joins Rauru on a hill and says, "We'll find strength in our allies and save these lands." And in our final scene, we see the sages and Rauru being cheered on by the mixed group of soldiers we saw earlier, who are raising their hands and saying, "To serve Rauru, the King of Light." And that's it for the trailer, but we're not done yet, because Nintendo released even more information through some new character art. We got an official image of the Korok, again wearing an orange scarf rather than his Zonai black scarf, with the description, "Calamo, or Calamo, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, is a boisterous Korok roaming Hyrule in search of a place to put down roots." Put down roots? Is this, in fact, the Deku Tree? I think it probably just means he's a wanderer looking for a team to ally with, but who knows? They do seem to be hinting at something here. We also see the Mysterious Construct, who, for now, just appears to be called the Mysterious Construct. And his description is fittingly mysterious, as it simply says he can transform and take to the skies. And lastly, we also see some other miscellaneous soldiers who haven't gotten an official description yet, but based on my very official Google translating, are simply described as warriors of various races, with the caption reading, "Join Zelda and friends in the battle against the Demon King." So overall, we got a lot of information today. Nintendo and KT continue to intrigue me with all this new original lore, as well as the genuinely fun-looking gameplay. We're less than 2 weeks out now, and while it's hard to wait, I am hoping to do at least one more theory video before the game is released, so keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested in watching me be bad at combat, I plan on doing a stream on release day. While I'm trying to keep my expectations reasonable, it's hard, because everything I've seen so far has been really exciting. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the game holds up. Anyway, I have a flight to catch, so that's all for this Kokiri Theory Field Report. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.